Well, hello there, fellow Indy Grit community members. Here's my hedgehog, and I'm going to get to that story in just a minute. But before I do, let me just applaud you for making it through another week of this double trouble, our global pandemic coupled with economic collapse. I applaud your grit in getting this far. And this past week, there have been some glimpses of the other shore that we're headed towards. And boy, that's been encouraging. Well, let me just remind you of where we've been. 3 weeks ago, I spoke to you about the tension of the Stockdale paradox, and that had to do with, first of all, um, acknowledging the brutal facts of the double trouble that we're in, while at the same time expressing confidence and just optimism that we're going to get through to the other side, and perhaps even come out the other side a little stronger for having experienced it. 2 weeks ago, I spoke to you about the first of three character qualities that I believe are absolutely essential for this global crisis that we're in. And that first character quality was humility. And I shared with you the story of United Airlines Flight 232 and the humility that was modeled by Captain Alfred Haynes in the crash landing that saved the lives of many, many people. Last week was curiosity, and I shared with you a little bit about Pixar Animation Studios, the fact that they, in fact, use curiosity as a corporate virtue, a strategic advantage for them. I also spoke about who buys shoes and who collects domain names. The point of that had to do with the kinds of things you can learn by asking the right questions that'll help you get a strategic advantage by really understanding who the clients are who value and are willing to pay for your services. Also spoke to you about the difference between deep water challenges and high wave challenges, which are the object of a strong leader's curiosity. Well, and so that brings us up to date to today, and I want to talk to you about the third character quality, and that is generosity. And maybe you're skeptical about this whole idea of generosity. If so, let me remind you of the legendary Saint Nicholas, who has his generosity has given rise to the entire custom of gift giving at Christmas time. And boy, if you don't think that has had an impact on our global economy and society, it certainly has. It's one of those ripples in a pond from a big boulder that has gone across the entire pond of the global economy and society. So generosity is a big deal, and here's why. Your success in life and your livelihood is dependent on relationships. And relationships are built on trust, and nothing fuels trust like generosity. Let me just share with you three ways that generosity is the building block for a trusting relationship. The first is that trust begets trust. By that I mean trust is reciprocal. And if you begin a relationship, you're the first one to demonstrate some generosity in a relationship. It's an invitation to the other person to be generous as well and to begin building a trusting relationship. The second element that generosity can build is set the tone for a relationship. And as you well know, in any relationship, any lasting relationship, there are going to be times when there's a little bit of disappointment or maybe a little element of mistrust creeps into the relationship. And that's when you really need the benefit of the doubt. And if you have begun the relationship with some generosity that builds that solid foundation, you're likely to receive the benefit of the doubt, which is so important because it's so much, it is just so difficult to rebuild a relationship once trust has been breached. Um, it's been said, and I will read this to you so I get it right, um, that uh, trust comes on foot, but it leaves on horseback. Well, that sounds to me like something Ben Franklin would have said, but I understand the origins of that are actually Dutch. It's worth noting that curiosity is a prerequisite for generosity. And for the person who lacks curiosity, generosity means giving everyone you meet a pen with your corporate logo emblazoned on it. Well, that's not what I'm talking about. When I say generosity, I'm thinking true generosity has to do with a little bit of self-sacrifice. It's unselfish. It doesn't expect anything in return. And curiosity leads you to do a little bit of investigation to find out what the other person really needs and to provide that in a timely way. Um, and so it's not about giving what you've got a surplus of, it's giving the right thing at the right time. And well, that leads me back to my friendly hedgehog here. So let me tell you about my hedgehog. It was a gift from a very thoughtful and generous person when I incorporated How Leadership back in 2007. And at that time, the book Good to Great by Jim Collins was on every entrepreneur's reading list. And in the book, Collins develops the hedgehog concept. And so this very thoughtful and generous colleague gave me my hedgehog to celebrate the start of my new business, How Leadership. And I want to tell you that gift, it's been very special. It's occupied a prominent and conspicuous place on my business, on my desk, these past 13 years. And the gift, it wasn't about the money that was expended. It was just the right thing to encourage me at that very special and important pivot in my career. And so, my purpose in sharing that story with you is to expand your perspective on what generosity looks like. And I really think of this as generous living. And generous living goes beyond, it includes, but it goes beyond giving of your financial resources in a strategic way to help somebody that has a genuine need. And it has to do with using your time, your talents, and really all of your resources. And I'm reminded of a story told by singer and songwriter Sarah Groves, who actually wrote a song about it. This story of a friend of hers who was walking downtown one day with an armful of packages and tripped over a homeless man who was on the sidewalk. And she took a fall, spilled all the packages on this poor man. And the homeless man looked at her very sincerely and said, "Do you see me? Can you see me really?" And a conversation ensued, and the woman learned that this homeless man had come to believe that he was invisible. And he'd come to that conclusion because day after day, people passed him by, never made eye contact, never acknowledged him, spoke to him in any way. And for as long as he can remember, nobody had paid the least bit of attention to him. And he just came to the conclusion he must be invisible. Well, that incident had a major impact on this woman's life and was really the turning point in her life when she really began to live generously. I'll put a link to the story below the video. Sarah Groves went on to write a song about it. But the point of all of that is that living generously has to do with what you do and what you pay attention to with your time, your talent, and all of the resources that you do have. Well, I said that a prerequisite for generosity is curiosity. And so I know you're curious because you've been paying attention to this video all the way up to this point. So you're probably asking yourself, what does generosity really look like? Well, let me just share with you a few ways that I think living generously can look like. The first way is that it could be amazing customer service. Or it could be, if you're in the position to do this, extending some empathy to an employee who has lost a dearly loved pet and giving that employee some time off to grieve their loss, even though there's nothing that you're going to find in the employee handbook about doing that. It could be um, just providing a little coaching to a colleague who is freaked out about giving a big presentation. It's bagels and coffee to celebrate a personal achievement of one of your coworkers. Could be mowing your neighbor's lawn when their child is in intensive care. It is sharing your story with a young entrepreneur who is walking a lonely and dark road. Could be stopping to help a child that's learning to ride their bicycle and has taken a spill. And you help them get dusted off and encourage them to get back on and try again. All of those things are ways that the generous person lives. And as you can tell from those examples, it's not primarily about giving money. Well, as I wrap up this series, here we are, part 4 of Grit for the Global Pandemic. Let me just remind you of some of the things I've repeated in our Indy Grit community events. The first is, hey, I encourage you to be humble. And humility has to do with sharing transparently with other people the challenges that you're facing so that they can provide a little encouragement. It is about being curious and asking how others have gotten through the struggles that you're facing and letting them share with you what they did when they were facing those kinds of challenges. And then thirdly, it is about the generosity to lend a helping hand to somebody that is facing something that you have been through. And so here we are, another week. I encourage you to show that humility, curiosity, and generosity. Here as we get a little bit closer to the other side, and we're starting to get glimpses of what I'm referring to as our new abnormal. And yeah, you heard me right. I'm calling it the new abnormal. And why I call it that, well, that is a video for another day. But in the meantime, I applaud you for demonstrating grit to get to this point. Here we are at the start of another week. The shoreline is in sight, so keep gritting it out to get to the other side. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing you once again face to face in the very near future. Godspeed and have a good week.